Hello everyone, welcome back to On The Fly. Today I'm taking a trade between the Vegas Golden Knights and the St. Louis Blues. So the Golden Knights do receive Barbashev in exchange for Zach Dean. So taking a look at this deal, it is quite the trade overall. And it's going to be one that I'm sure will have a lot of repercussions, especially in terms of the Western Conference playoffs situation right now. With the Golden Knights picking up Barbashev, that's a huge pickup, especially for a team that right now is in the fight for their lives in terms of the playoffs. And one of the big reasons for that is that in terms of the West, we've obviously talked a lot about the East the last little while with all the trades they've been making and just overall how their teams have looked. You look just up and down, the top point getter in the Western Conference equivalates to roughly the wild card spot in the East. So it is pretty interesting to see sort of the discrepancy there. I do expect Vegas to sort of jump that curve. I expect that to sort of even back out. The West starts to jump up. But that being said, the way Vegas has been playing has not been the best of hockey. Obviously, they have a pretty good record and they're a good team, so they sort of get bailed out by that. But at the same time, Vegas needs to sort of get it together. Barbashev, however, I think is going to be quite the boost for him. I think he's going to slot in quite nicely alongside that second line. You could argue him on the third line, first line, whatever you want to call him. I see him sort of on that second line. So I'd be curious to see sort of where they use Barbashev. Obviously, a player with his stature is going to be quite the pickup. And as for the Blues, you get a guy like Zach Dean. We saw a little bit of Zach Dean in the World Junior Championships. And from what I gathered from him, especially his gameplay, gritty grinder type guy, going to get in the corners, going to fight his way out of stuff. Was really a fan of him the entire tournament. Wasn't really a liability on defense. Obviously, in a tournament where you're sort of outplaying everybody as a Canadian, it was interesting to see sort of how he still managed to play his game throughout. He took a bad penalty at one point, but that's a side point. But with that being said, Zach Dean, he looked pretty good. So I'll be curious to see sort of where this trade gets the Blues. I think it's a great pickup for the Blues, especially for a guy like Barbashev, who was very unlikely to have returned. So when we look at it sort of like that, we look at sort of Barbashev heading out, you get a top pick. You have a 30th overall pick in 2020 with Zach Dean, and I think it's a great pick, especially because Dean's the sort of player that would fit quite nicely in St. Louis, especially sort of the way they play. You look at sort of who they have, Thomas, Kyrou. Obviously, they've traded away already O'Reilly, Tarasenko, now Barbashev. You're looking down the list, who else is still to go? I think they're just about there. I don't see too many more guys going, but at the same time, St. Louis has had quite the deadline. Well, once the deadline's over, I'll go over a recap. They will most definitely be one of the winners of the trade deadline. They made some great trades. This one is no different. I'm a huge fan of this. And just overall, the Golden Knights, obviously they gave up a lot to get a guy like Barbashev, but I think it's going to be a really good pickup, especially as we head towards sort of the playoffs and the ramp up. Barbashev is going to fit quite nicely in Vegas, and I do expect him to sort of flourish on that second line. And hopefully, for Vegas at least, that they can hopefully make it far in this playoffs, because the truth is, the West is up for grabs right now, to be completely honest with you. The East, it's a little bit more locked down. Anybody could really take it. But when the West, it's a lot more open. You have sort of two teams you're looking at. I'm looking at Vegas. I'm looking at Colorado to sort of take control of the Western Conference. We'll see, obviously, if that's the case. But at the same time, Vegas, Colorado, for me, are the two teams to watch for. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. As for the trade grades, I'm going to give Vegas a B. Overall, I think if they can re-sign Barbashev, I think that goes up. Barbashev's a pretty good player. You have to just say it as it is. He's a good player. I don't know if he's quite worth Zach Dean. I think they're pretty equivalent in terms of value. But for the St. Louis Blues, however, because of this, I'm going to give them another A. And they've been sort of on fire with me the last little while. Mainly because when you look at this deal, the reason why they're an A is because Barbashev, most likely at least, would have walked after this year. So I'm pretty impressed that they can get the 30th overall pick from a guy like Barbashev, where obviously he's walking. You get a guy like Dean. I think it's a great pickup overall. We'll see if that turns into anything near the future. But with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you're really consider subscribing, tell all your friends and comment down below your thoughts on the trade. Until next time, see you.